In 1919, he hit 29 home runs and was sold to the New York Yankees.
A 3-run home run for Buffington. The Yankees now lead it by a score of 3-2.
Bill Lee is now going over to a couple of the Yankees, and there they go again.
Ball hits it to deep left. That might send the Yankees to the World Series.
Varitek and A-Rod going at it. Roberts is going. Posada's throw. Roberts safe.
What can I say? Just tip my hat and call the Yankees my daddies.
Welcome to Fanbase, a deep dive into the greatest rivalry in sports. Episode 122. John Senecal, Brian Shackman here. We got a bunch of items up for bid. I do want to touch quickly on the Judge comeback and Boone not playing him the second night and your experience going to the game that he came back and hit the dinger. We'll want to talk about, obviously, Domingo German a little bit. We want to talk about the team's chances from here on in. And then maybe a little more your experience in Philadelphia with Bobby Dickerson and the Phillies. Did you get, by the way, don't go in and out, but did you get some FaceTime with Bobby?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, I got to talk to him.
He was good?
Yeah. I mean, it's different there because they have like this DJ playing behind home plate, like this music that's like, I mean, when I say bumping, it's bumping.
It's bumping.
And it's like you can hardly hear yourself think.
It's not like Yankee Stadium or Fenway.
Yeah.
In that sense. Let's start with Aaron Judge. I mean, later in the week, Boone came out and was a little edgy on a podcast actually about sitting him in the second night and
we sat him on the third night.
Well, no, he played the first game.
He came back on a Friday, played on Saturday,
right,
and then he sat him on Sunday night.
Right, so he played one game and then sat.
No, he played Friday, Saturday, and sat Sunday.
Okay, is that right? Is that right?
Yeah.
I thought he sat on the second game.
No, he played. I was at the game Friday, and then I was thinking he would not play on Saturday because I had friends going. He wound up playing Saturday. Hit a home run Saturday.
Yeah,
that's when they trounced him. That's the only game they won of the series. And then Sunday, he sat, much to the dismay of the ESPN crowd.
Well, the thing is, like, why can't you just DH him? It's 4 stupid at bats.
Well, I think that's a valid point. I mean, especially in the position that you're in, right? And fighting for your basically life, and the team is in the doldrums. The trade deadline's approaching, and the second, probably arguably best player on the planet is off the IL, and you need him. So at least DH him, get him in, keep him in the lineup.
And I know he's, worth a ton of money. And he's big, and he's coming off an injury where he carries a lot of weight on his feet. But the bottom line is
he's also needed. And I don't think Judge was happy about it either.
No, of course he wants to compete. But if you're going to activate him, play him. I mean, I just thought it was stupid.
Yep.
Because it just didn't make sense to me. But tell me, so did he get any hits the night you were there?
No, he actually did what will probably happen to him a lot unless the Yankees start playing better. They walked him 3 times, and his first at bat he lined out to center hard. Right center, a hard one. Was loud. Yeah. First pitch back, and then 3 walks after that, and then they lost 2-0 on a walk off by Santander on the 9th. Right. This is after a 2.5 hour rain delay, which is it's a gut punch. I mean, even though it's we were in Pennsylvania, so we looked and we were like, oh, Judge is back, Cole's pitching, let's go. It's an hour and 40 minutes away. We drove down and literally pulled into the stadium right. An hour before the game, right as the game's going to start, like 10 minutes beforehand, up on the scoreboard, inclement weather's coming. We don't know when the game's going to start. So we look at the thing. We're like, ugh, this doesn't look good.
Did it rain?
Oh, did it rain, dude? It rained.
Were you under? Did you get underneath?
They sent everybody inside. They made an announcement. We got on like the walkways, up high, so we weren't down in the bowl. It was a great spot, but boy, did it rain. So they didn't. 2.5 hour rain delay.
Did you stay for the whole game?
We stayed for the whole game. And
where did you go after? Because then it's like after midnight.
Yeah, so we drove home. We drove back to the hotel up in Pennsylvania. Yeah, because we had a game the next day.
You did?
Yeah, but the game was at like 11:30. So I mean, the kids slept in the car on the ride back. But it turned out to be kind of a crappy night. But it would have been a great night, obviously, if the Yankees won. But then you can see Judge come back, and you got to take the opportunity when you're that close, especially if you're normally like a 6-hour drive away.
Like I said, you're a baseball fan. The thing is, then they pitch to him at least a little bit. The next night he hits a home run, they get smoked. So obviously the recipe is to not pitch to him. But I want to say, we'll do German after this, so we might as well get to it, because then we can bring in the Red Sox, is chances. I still, and I'm not trying to equivocate or hedge, but based on a little bit of the life that you saw Stanton late this week, there's still a chance that Judge just being there makes things easier for Rizzo and Stanton and everybody else. And I think there is a scenario that still has them get hot and make the wild card. I mean, I think that a lot of people think that even putting Domingo German in this position, putting him in alcohol rehab, is sort of an admission that the season is lost. Some people might say that, and I think it may be true. But I find I'm a little uncomfortable writing the Yankees off, even though many people like Matt Soroy's our good friend who produces the show, he's done. But I don't think they're done.
I mean, it's easy as a Yankees fan, especially the way they've struggled all season, right, to write them off. And then it's just like another punch, another punch, another punch. And then, you talk about Judge coming back and you hope that he makes the players around him better. And when we say that, like, he
does, though.
He needs Stanton and he needs Rizzo to hit. If those guys aren't hitting around him,
you can't win.
You're not going to win, right? That being said, you go to Domingo German, you lose Domingo German for the rest of the season. It is what it is. He has to take care of his business, right? But at the same time, now you have Nestor Cortez coming back for his next start later in the week.
You'd like to have them both, though.
You'd like to have them both, but at the same time, you do have a replacement coming back, and I guess Johnny Brito will pitch, even though he got shelled the other night. But it's nice to know that Cortez is coming back. He is ready to go, apparently healthy, and hopefully he pitches better than Rodon's been pitching, because Rodon has not been good.
So you're fine with them doing nothing at the deadline?
Well, I mean, I think the position they were in is they really couldn't do much, and I say that because they didn't have much to do with.
Bader.
Bader hasn't really been playing that great. I mean, he's not exactly a player that people were out there going after. If that was the case, a guy like Dylan Carlson would have been dealt. And he wasn't.
Right.
And then you look across the league, and when the Cubs stood pat at the trading deadline, I mean, that was almost bigger than Shohei, because I think in the back of the mind, I think Shohei wasn't going anywhere anyways, as long as that, because I think they really want to try to retain him because he's the premier player. But when the Cubs stood pat and said they're not going to trade players, I think that really calmed the whole seas, really, in a way, because that's what pushed the Verlander button and the
because Stroman would have been, you would have rather had Stroman than Verlander, right? I mean, I think ultimately,
a cheaper option, not as long as a commitment, even though how much money Uncle Steve is picking up. But, like going back to the Yankees, there's really not that. If they're not going to trade their top, any one of their top 4 prospects, they're not going to get anybody because they don't have anybody to deal.
Right. Okay. So then the second thing is when you talk to, like Dan Shaughnessy wrote about the Red Sox and Chaim Bloom, that the fact that they didn't make trades shows that Chaim doesn't think the team is good enough.
But I think,
I almost look at it the opposite way, in the sense that he knows what the team is, and you talk about coming back, like who knows what Chris Sale's going to be? We talked about that. Trevor Story, Tanner Houck, and who's the other pitcher? What's his name? Come on, the Rule 4 guy that they had who's good. Oh.
Whitlock.
Yeah, Whitlock. If those guys all come back, and then there's plenty of talent there that to make the team better. But I'm not sure that Chaim Bloom knows what he's doing. But what I will say is that I'm okay with what they did, because the same logic is that the upgrades wouldn't be worth what you'd lose. And even like Casas, who's like been on fire since the All-Star break, it's like they've already, in some ways, I thought they were a last place team, and I thought they'd be at best, 83 and 81.
Right.
And they're on a trajectory to be better than that. So they are who they say they were, or whatever Green said, the Minnesota Vikings coach. I mean, it doesn't make me like the team anymore, or like their chances. Actually, watching their West Coast trip where they should have swept the Giants and didn't, and then they lost 2 or 3 in Seattle when they could have maybe won at least 2 or 3. I think they're an incredibly flawed team, but I'm okay with them doing nothing, because I think it doesn't. Your point is the same point. It wouldn't have increased their chances anymore. So why bother?
Right, especially with the people that were available and what you could do with what the team you had. I think the Red Sox are doing the same thing the Yankees are. They're looking at the space they have in the wild card, knowing all along they have almost basically zero chance of winning the division, and hoping that, just like everybody else in the past since the wild card's been introduced, get into the playoffs and make a run. I mean, that's just as simple as it is. I mean, that's the way you got to look at it if you're those two
But the
teams.
Yankees are usually buyers no matter what their situation is, and so that makes it a little bit newsworthy. But I think that standing pat, they both don't have championship teams, so why bother? He's John Senecal. I'm Brian Shackman. This is Fan Base, a deep dive into the greatest rivalry in sports, episode 122.
When it comes down to it, they both don't have championship teams,
don't, though.
so why bother? It's so true, though. I was thinking about that when I was driving over here this morning, and I was listening, and they were talking about the Atlanta Braves roster, if it was the best Atlanta Braves roster that ever.
Even compared to the 90s and
compared to the 90s, right? And it basically came down to the pitching. If the pitching is healthy now, there's a chance that it could be. But the pitching is such a question mark for the Braves right now, with Max Fried being out and Spencer Strider so off and on, and Kyle Wright might come back, he might not come back, compared to the Glavine, the Maddox, and the Smoltz days, right? We know the hitting is there. But then I said to myself, and I'm thinking, and I said, there's no way the Yankees, if they even got to the World Series, could beat this team.
No,
they just couldn't do it.
No, especially in a 7-game series. With like the Red Sox, they right now they only have three starters, and they're not even great starters. So the comparisons, it's clear that the rosters, when you compare to somebody like the Braves, it's not even close.
The Braves roster is so scary.
Which brings you to Domingo German. I talked about, remember about a month and a half ago, I talked about the game where he beat the Red Sox, but I was like, the inning I watched, he got hit so hard. It just didn't. It worked out. I was like, this guy should get shelled, and he didn't. And then he goes out and he pitches the perfect game, and then he goes out and gets shelled, and then he goes into rehab for alcohol. And I just wonder, if you look at the absolute
up and downs
of his performance, you could see that maybe something was wrong, right?
Something was going on.
And I wonder also, I don't think without his ability to use stuff to affect spin rate, I think he's very average when he doesn't have that. I don't know what happened the night he had the perfect game, but I look at it 2 levels. The personal level, you don't want to see anybody suffer, and you want everyone to have a good life. So from the pure baseball perspective, I sort of separate it out a little bit, because if he's not well, you want him to get well. At the same time, I did sort of look at it as an admission of in a cynical way of Cashman throwing in the towel for the season, because if they really were doing great, do you really think they'd care that much about the individual, or did maybe something happen? I don't really know.
Well, so with Domingo German, he's an interesting cat, right? Because he had the issue, was it 2 years ago, with supposed domestic violence, where he missed 60 or something games with domestic violence policy, which, of course, the charges were dropped, just like, what's the guy's name in Atlanta?
Where the person just removes the charges and won't testify.
Exactly.
So they have no case, so they have to drop it.
Right.
Which does not mean there was
this is not the first time we've ever heard that happening, right?
No, that happens a lot.
So where there's smoke, there's fire, right?
Yep.
So I would say, as a person who hasn't had a drink in 2.5 years, who knows a little thing about not drinking and drinking, I would say something's been brewing for a while.
There's red flags.
Right. Something's been brewing for a while. So I think his case, is a lot deeper, because I'm guessing that the alcohol affects his performance and his temper and his overall, I didn't drink and get violent, right?
Right.
I didn't want to go out and smack people. I just like to drink, right? Where other people get rowdy and want to fight. So I'm guessing there's a little bit more issues with him. So I think it's great that he's getting the help he deserves, needs.
But the timing is interesting.
But the timing is interesting. Not as more interesting as CeCe when he dropped off the face of the earth 2 days before the playoffs. Yeah. But again, it is what it is. You have to get your help. But I think his circumstances, are a little bit different than just someone that might had a few issues. I think his has been going on for a little while. Now, that being said, I was thinking to myself, and I've been reading online, he goes on a restricted list, which I believe he doesn't get paid by the team, but I'm guessing he's going to get the benefits from the team. I'm not 100% sure, because a lot of people were complaining that a player that has anxiety issues is not put on a restricted list. And they were using Austin Meadows with Detroit as an example.
But if the guy's got a serious substance use disorder, is a recognized disease.
Exactly. And that's I think that is the gray area. Now, I'm not 100% sure if he doesn't get paid. Now, I don't know why they'd be so blowing up about this online. I didn't really get a lot of time to look into it, but I'm guessing that would be the case. If you're on a restricted list, you might not get paid your normal salary, where if you're on an active roster, but maybe on some medical list, or on the IL or the 60-day IL or whatever, you might still be getting paid. Hence, the anxiety issues with Austin Meadows. But it's unfortunate that the Yankees have this. But again, you have another
players on this list do not get paid.
Well, there you go. So now he's not. I'm guessing Domingo German was probably
something must have happened. Maybe there was an incident where he missed a team meeting, or I don't know.
Right.
Because that's a big deal.
Do all players that have alcohol issues get put on that list?
No, but you. This is not like a podcasty baseball point, but from a news perspective, if you recognize it as a disease or an illness, he should get paid.
Yeah.
Okay. Unless something happened and he had no choice, because the union would step in.
Right.
The players' union, even though it's not the Donald Fear days, it's pretty aggressive about defending their players. So maybe something. I hadn't even thought about any of these nuances, but the team must feel like it's justified. And also, like, if he's going into rehab and they're willing to yank his pay, that means they're pissed.
Yeah, something's going on with him. Well, again, suspension. Like, I think this would be his third, not, I guess, suspension. He had the suspension for the domestic violence thing. He had the sticky issue, which cost them a stretch in the playoffs. Not the playoffs, but the heat of the moment. And now this. So, I mean, maybe
you think he might be done with the Yankees?
Oh, I would guess he would be done with the Yankees. Yeah, really? I think he's probably, that's it.
See, it's funny because I read the headlines and I find myself empathetic.
Yeah.
Being like, oh, something must be wrong with this guy. But maybe he did something that the Yankees are like, we're not going to outright release you.
Right. We're going to help you.
We're going to give you something that the appearance of won't be so bad, but you keep your mouth shut and do this if you want to have a chance to have any career after this.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with him. It's going to be real interesting.
I hadn't thought about it. Well, let John bring in the insight. John Senecal, Brian Shackman here, fan base, a deep dive into the greatest rivalry in sports. And, finally, the trip you had to Philly.
Little baseball John.
What a great trip you had with your son.
Yeah, it was great because it started with the Yard Goats that Friday beforehand.
Because you were in Reading?
You got me tickets to the Yard Goats.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And we saw the Somerset Patriots play Jason Dominguez and the Yankees minor league prospects.
Well, first of all, Tim Restall got you the tickets.
Yes,
I just made the ask, but Restall's the best.
But yeah, it was. I mean, what a great place to watch baseball. That being said, so I went from the Yard Goats to the Harrisburg Senators, which are also in the Eastern League, and I saw them play against the Akron Arrows, I believe it was, which I think is the Indians. But anyways, the Harrisburg Senators is the Double-A Washington Nationals, and then they had a plethora of prospects on their team that they got in the Juan Soto trade, who Robert Hassel III is an outfielder. James Woods is an outfielder who's like the number 4 prospect in MLB. And Brady House, who's a third baseman, who they didn't get from that trade, but he's a big prospect. But anyway, so we got to see those guys play. And it's fun going to the minor league parks because you get that different interaction.
How does it compare, though?
Definitely different. It's not. It doesn't feel like an MLB stadium where, like, the Yard Goats Duncan Park feels more like an MLB stadium the way it's built. This is more of like your wood outfield wall. They have a boardwalk along the outfield wall, but there's no stands out there. It's just your typical, nice seats down around the bowl on the inside, and then some metal bleachers down the right field line.
So it feels a tiny bit more rickety.
Yep, a little bit rickety. Yeah. But the cool thing was about that park is they had bleachers down the right field line, and it was foul ball heaven. So if you came with a glove and you were a kid and the crowd was enough, you could almost literally play the foul ball in the bleachers. They were big enough. So it's great. It's great for the fans. And they had this boardwalk, they called it, that went along the whole outfield wall where you could stand, and they had some seats, but most was standing room, and you could look down into the bullpens, and then you could literally be talking to the outfielders. And we got in the center field, and these high school kids we're having full-on conversations with the center fielder, and Robert Hassel III, who's a big prospect, was one of them. So it was cool to see the interaction.
Yeah.
I mean, and the players can hear everything you're saying because it's minor league ball, and they're talking right back, and they're having a good time. So that part was fun. And then we wound up in Philly. And,
well, let me just add a quick question. I know you don't drink, but you didn't check the beer prices, or did you?
They're all $10
a beer like everywhere else.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that night it was Thirsty Harrisburg. It was Thirsty Thursdays. $2 drafts of Miller Lite, 12 ounce. So there was a lot of people carrying drafts, and I think it went to 8 o'clock. So it was from 6 to 8.
Right.
But at like 8:15, there was a lot of lined ups.
Yeah. So what you do is in the old days, you buy 2 and then you go right to the back of the line.
Yep. Check back right line.
Finish by the time you get to the front.
So I mean, I'll tell you, Brian, no more in the last 2.5 years than on this trip.
Were you tempted?
Oh my God! Did I want to sit back and just rip a beer?
I'm glad you didn't.
But yeah, so we after that we go to Philly, and we Bobby Dickerson got us the BP passes.
Bobby Dickerson, who's the infield coach for the Phillies, who's been on the podcast, who you knew from the minors in upstate New York, who you were in his wedding.
Yeah, he used to play for the Yankees minor league. So anyways, he's been in the majors for a while now as a coach, but he gets us the BP passes, and I've been dying to ask him, if you remember back in the World Series, Alec Boehm hit a home run, and right before he hit that home run, Bryce Harper went over and whispered something in his ear. So everyone made a big deal about it. They must know something, blah blah blah. Harper knows something,
like tipping a pitch or something,
or whatever. And so it wasn't a lot. We didn't get a lot of time to talk, and there's a lot going on. There's tons of music playing. He's talking to other guys that are coming up to him. And I made it a point that I wanted to ask him that one question. So, and I'm thinking I'm going to get this great, answer, with this and that. And he said he didn't say anything to him. He literally didn't say anything to him. Their whole plan was to mess with the Astros.
Get out.
Because they thought that they had something in that series, that they were
stealing signs.
So there was their whole thing was, and they would calculate time doing it, in the right time.
So it was premeditated, fake
banter.
Huh. And so, and does Harper come up with that on his own, or does the coaching staff be like, do this?
Yeah, it was a discussed thing, but it wasn't like it was going to be all the time.
And you believe that?
I believe it.
Yeah. Okay.
It's gamesmanship.
I'm not skeptical. I'm just asking.
It's baseball gamesmanship, and the way he said it to me was just
why would he lie?
It was just so quick, and it wasn't even like he thought about it. It was just it was such an afterthought, and he thought, and I said, "Come on, you kidding me?" And he goes, "No," and he goes, "And that's the best part." He goes, "Everyone made such a big deal about it because it was the perfect time," and he's like, "It happened before other times, but it just wasn't that perfect time." Like they caught every moment of it. They caught the interaction, and then they caught the home run right afterwards. And of course, everyone thought,
And that wasn't out there. No one said that. Like that's a piece of not like breaking news, but that's a nuance. That
I haven't asked. I mean, I've never heard him say anything to answer the question.
Because here on Fanbase, it's content you can't find.
Anywhere
else.
It's the insight that you're looking for.
That you needed. If you hung out to the 20th minute or whatever in the podcast, you win. It's great to see you. I mean, it sounds like the trip was awesome with your son, and that's what life is all about.
Minus the 2.5-hour rain delay.
Yeah.
Everything was
still that's
good
really
times.
cool.
And he got Harper's autograph, too. So
on the card.
Yeah, he was happy. Happy camper.
Great.
They win the case.
All right, listen, we'll talk to you next week or whenever we get together again. This is Fanbase, a deep dive into the greatest rivalries